In this edition of Fix the Flick, we'll be looking at 2017's Justice League. The JLA has some of the most iconic, longest-running, and popular superheroes of all time. Their histories and personalities would make for interesting stories even if there were no superpowers involved. And the animated Justice League movies have been some of the most compelling super team-ups DC has ever produced. So it's kind of strange when a movie has all that narrative weight behind it, and the best you can say about it is that it was fine.
Well, I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me.
I don't. Not.
Most of Zack Snyder's version was reshot by Joss Whedon, so the movie's tone jumped back and forth between campy fun and grim realism. And since DC was trying to catch up with Marvel, all the new characters felt tacked on and rushed. Also, let's not forget the most generic supervillain of all time, if we can. Whichever tone the movie decided to go with, it should have been kept consistent. And if they'd figured out a way to use the established characters to help develop the new ones, the characterization would have felt a little bit more natural. Finally, had the villain been anything more than a bland video game boss, there would have been not only real conflict, but some genuine world building. So, with that in mind, let's try to fix Justice League. But before we do that, a little recap. Any fixes for any movie here on Fix the Flick carry over to any sequels in that movie's cinematic universe. So, in the fixed version of Batman vs. Superman, they do fight each other. But Superman lives, and he and Batman part ways as uneasy allies. And neither of them meet Diana Prince. The scene in Wonder Woman where she gets the picture from Bruce is the first contact they have in this fixed universe. Alright, so.
Everybody got that?
We start in Gotham with a criminal running from a parademon, and just as it's about to catch him, Batman arrives and fights it. And when it finally immolates itself this time, it doesn't leave behind box shapes for the convenience of the plot. Rather, Alfred points out that they've been trying to figure out what these alien monsters are for a month with no progress, and maybe Bruce should call Superman for some information. Bruce is reluctant to trust anyone else, but he says he knows one thing for sure. There'll be more. And with that, we go to Themyscira, where a gigantic horde of parademons swarm over the island, overpowering the Amazons. But they aren't led by Steppenwolf. Instead, they're led by Kalibak. Kalibak is the eldest son of Darkseid, who both hates his father and yet desperately wants his approval. And Kalibak doesn't just beam in next to the box and then play hot potato with the Amazons. First, if he's able to smash his way through the Amazons, we get a real sense of how overwhelmingly powerful he and his army are. Second, the boom tubes are formed by the mother boxes, so it's a little weird he could make one before he gets a hold of the first box. After he gets the box, Hippolyta then looses the warning arrow for Diana. We then cut to the scene where Diana sees the message on TV, and we're not showing the scene with the terrorists here, mainly because it's completely at odds with her whole character arc. In the theatrical version, Bruce even says that after Steve Trevor's death, she went into hiding and cut herself off from the world. Yep, there she is, laying low. Instead, she gets out the picture Bruce sent, looks at the note, and then heads for Gotham. Next, we go to Clark and Lois at the Kent farm. But instead of losing the farm to the bank, Clark is refusing to sell it. He tells Lois that the farm was the only place he could just be himself, and that especially now, he's really starting to miss that. He then looks down and we see that they're visiting the grave of his father and his mother. We see that even though Superman is beloved, there isn't a single person on the planet he can actually relate to. That's when he gets the message from Bruce asking him to look into the parademon's origin. After that, we go to Victor and his dad. No changes here. That scene sets up that Victor is scared of himself and angry with his dad pretty well.
For them to see the monster.
You are not a monster.
It's weird that you thought I meant me.
Barry with his dad is a little different. Instead of sad and mopey, Barry is overconfident and a little self-centered. When his father asks him not to come back again, Barry says that he's not going to let his father rot in prison alone. He's thinking about how his father's situation affects him, not the other way around. But the scene where we introduce Arthur is really different. We first see him saving the sailor, but when the sailor's grateful father offers to buy him a drink, Arthur refuses to drink with him. We see that Arthur feels rejected, so he rejects people in turn. From there, we go to the meeting between Bruce and Clark. Clark tells Bruce that the creatures are called parademons, but he doesn't know who's controlling them or why they're on Earth. That's when Diana shows up. Bruce introduces Superman, as Clark Kent, to Diana Prince, an Amazon from a magical island. Clark leans over and asks, "Are you serious?" Bruce tells Clark that after their fight, he started monitoring for other metahumans. Clark, excited about the possibility of meeting people like him, asks Bruce if he found any more. Bruce is very reluctant to get anyone else involved, but Diana then tells them about the first time. But instead of terraforming Earth, he's trying to harness the power of the Unity to become a new god. And if he succeeds this time, he'll destroy Earth to demonstrate his power. So Clark volunteers to talk to Victor, Bruce reluctantly agrees to see Barry, and Diana leaves to visit Arthur. Part of the reason Steppenwolf was so bland was because his character had no one to play off of. So we see Kalibak use the first mother box to contact Desaad, Darkseid's head torturer and right-hand man. Kalibak tells Desaad to report to his father that he's found the first mother box, and that he's searching for the others. We see that Kalibak is desperate to impress his father, and this motivation makes him a little more relatable. But Desaad reminds Kalibak that he's still not recognized as Darkseid's son. Kalibak says, "Not until the Unity. Not until I become a new god." In Metropolis, Clark interviews Victor's father about the mother box. While he's talking, Clark sees Victor listening in. Later, Victor confronts Clark, knowing who he really is. Clark tries to recruit him, but Victor doesn't trust the alien tech that's overwhelming his senses. But he doubts the Superman would understand. Clark tells him how his super senses plagued him as a child, and how he was eventually able to accept them. Clark tells Victor that what he's become is only a curse if he treats it like one. In Central City, Barry walks in on Bruce and asks who he is and how he knows his name. And Bruce starts rattling off everything he knows about Barry Allen. And it's here that we learn all about Barry's jobs and how he's essentially going nowhere with his life. Bruce asks him if he's ever thought about serving something other than himself. Barry says that he's doing just fine and that Bruce Wayne's altruism would be more compelling if it didn't stop at cutting checks. Bruce mutters that he's got a good point, so that's when he throws the batarang. And once Barry realizes that Bruce Wayne is the Batman, he starts geeking out with a million questions. Bruce stops him and says that he needs his help, and Barry says,
"Stop right there. I'm in."
From there, we see Diana walking into Arthur's bar. She gets his attention and he starts hitting on her.
You're gorgeous.
Eventually, Diana reveals who she is and where she's from, and that she knows who he is and where he's from. She tells him about the alliance the Amazons and the Atlanteans once had, and that it's needed once again. Arthur says that he and the Atlanteans aren't big fans of each other. Diana tells him that she grew up on an island. It was comfortable, safe. But when she found out about a threat to the world, she knew she needed to leave. And if she hadn't had the courage to leave her safe, comfortable island, she never would have found her purpose in life. She leaves her card, wondering if Arthur has the courage to leave his island. Arthur thinks about their talk. He then figures, screw it, and goes to Atlantis, and finds Mira. The fact that they were so casually talking right after Steppenwolf got the mother box always felt a little off. So Mira greets him as a prince, and they generally have the same conversation they did in the original movie. Then Kalibak attacks, and things play out the same way they did in the theatrical version. Bringing the second mother box back to his lair, Kalibak merges it with the first one, saying that once the unity begins, the Kryptonian will surely try to stop him. So he starts gathering a massive amount of energy, saying that the Kryptonian must be stopped first. Clark hears the mother box sound, goes to investigate, and finds Kalibak waiting for him. Superman asks him why he wants the mother boxes. Kalibak says that it's the only way he can take his place by his father's side. Kalibak asks Superman why he would fight for this world, that it's not his home, they aren't his people, that he is alone. Then a boom tube opens up above him and teleports Superman away. He appears on a desolate world with a red sun, which greatly reduces his powers. We see a green glow light up his back, and in a flash of light we go back to Metropolis, where we see Victor's dad get kidnapped, and Victor finding the aftermath. He uses his abilities to locate Superman, but instead finds out that Superman's working with Bruce and Diana. At the airport, Arthur meets Diana just as Bruce gets back with Barry. She says that she's glad he had the courage to leave his island. Then Victor shows up looking for Superman. Bruce says that he hasn't been able to reach him. Victor then tells Bruce about his father. But in this version, he's not cold like he was in the movie. He's clearly worried. Bruce says, "We're going to do what anybody would do in this situation. Call a cop." That's when we get the whole Jim Gordon scene, and they figure out where the hostages are. So the five of them go looking for the hostages. Bruce asks Diana, who has the most knowledge of Kalibak, how they should proceed. But she defers to Bruce. And Barry isn't scared like he was in the original. He's pumped to get into his first super fight. But Bruce tells him that he's not fighting, that he's the only one who can save the hostages. When Silas gets threatened, Victor calls out to his father and gives away their position. Then Diana and Arthur go after Kalibak, while Victor and Bruce fight off the parademons. But during the chaos, Barry gets distracted by an easy opportunity to attack Kalibak. Unfortunately, interference gives Kalibak a chance to take Silas hostage. Kalibak threatens to kill him if Victor doesn't give him the mother box. Before anyone can do anything, Victor gives the mother box to Kalibak in exchange for his father. When Kalibak leaves, the hole left by the boom tube lets the harbor in, and Arthur saves them, just like in the released version. Back in Russia, Kalibak joins the last mother box with the other two, and the unity begins. As Kalibak gets stronger, his mind begins absorbing knowledge as well. He yells, "It's here, on this planet. I never thought it would be here." And he starts laughing maniacally. In Metropolis, a spaceship powered by green energy crash lands. Clark then flies to the Batcave. He arrives and nobody's happy. Bruce asks why he didn't answer when they called him. Clark says that it's hard to explain and asks what's going on. Then Arthur accuses Victor of working with the enemy, and Bruce chews Barry out for risking lives. It also comes out that Bruce knew about the parademons for a month and didn't tell anyone, which pisses Diana off. It's clear the team isn't working. After storming off, Barry is sulking when he runs into Alfred. Alfred tells Barry about the times Batman saved the city. But for each one, he tells Barry what it cost Bruce personally. Barry is humbled by this and then apologizes to Bruce. He says that they're each held back in some way, and that alone, they're not enough to save the world. But maybe they're enough to save each other. And Diana tells them that even if they die, they'll die for a worthy cause. She says that Victor is the only one who can separate the mother boxes. Victor is still reluctant and asks Clark how he finally accepted what he was. Clark says that he eventually realized that all of the things that made him different could be used to help other people. He says that being a hero isn't something that you're given or born into. It's something you do. So Victor starts looking for Kalibak. Eventually, as they approach the abandoned nuclear plant, Arthur says that he's never felt like he fit in anywhere. But they accepted him, no questions asked, and that it feels good to be a part of something, to belong. That's when he realizes he's sitting on the golden lariat. They arrive, but the red skies weaken Clark's powers. Unity begins expanding, and Bruce again asks Diana to lead them. Finally, she tells Bruce to destroy the crystal on top of the dome to get Clark back to full strength. Barry needs to rescue the civilians. She and Arthur need to keep the parademons away from Victor while he separates the boxes. And Clark, still the strongest of them, needs to keep Kalibak busy. So Bruce sneaks to the top of the dome, only to find a unit of parademons guarding the crystal, while Barry begins rescuing the civilians. Diana and Arthur get Victor to the boxes, and he gets to work. And Clark fights Kalibak. But with his diminished strength, Kalibak begins to wear Clark down. Diana and Arthur are steadily overpowered by the parademons, while Victor begins to buckle under the Mother Box's energy. Barry exhausts himself rescuing the civilians, but he heads back to the dome. Bruce, using all of his gadgets and fighting expertise, gets through the parademons and destroys the crystal. With it destroyed, Clark turns the tide against Kalibak. When Victor is ready to separate the boxes, he yells at them to get clear of the destructive shockwave. But Diana tells him that they're not leaving him. And just as the boxes are separated, Clark flies Victor and Arthur to safety, and Barry rescues Diana. Kalibak, now severely weakened by the loss of the Unity, is attacked by the tortured parademons. He uses the last of his energy to create a boom tube and escape. Sometime later, we see Barry telling his dad about his new crime lab job, Victor and his dad working on the Mother Box, and Arthur heading toward Atlantis to learn more about his home. After that, we get the scene with Diana and the terrorists. We see that she's finally embraced a public persona and has become the inspiration that she was always meant to be. Finally, Clark and Lois are at his childhood home. She tells them that they can still try to figure something out with the bank, but Clark tells her that he's finally ready to let the place go. Lois asks, "What about a place where you can be yourself?" Clark smiles and we cut to Wayne Manor, where Bruce discusses the plans for a future Justice League with Alfred. In a mid-credits scene on Oa, the Guardians ask Hal Jordan why he helped the Kryptonian return to Earth, saying he shouldn't have drawn attention to the planet, knowing how important it is. Hal says, "I believe the secret has been revealed. I believe Darkseid knows the equation is on Earth." So, that's how I would fix 2017's Justice League. Are there any movies that you think are in need of repair? If so, email me at the link down below or post a comment. And remember to click like and subscribe if you want to see more movies get fixed. Until next time, I'm Mr. Fix-It for Fix the Flick.